I had the pleasure of meeting Diane in late 2021. And even though I've only met her very briefly and for a short period of time, and it was over Zoom, her passion for Jewish American history, women's history, Rebecca Gratz, and scholarship in general, her passion was obvious and her kindness was as well. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to debut the website. We have a dedication here for Diane on the About page. This collection of letters, this digital collection, were sent to us from a number of partner institutions. Without the partners for this project, as well as the donors, the project wouldn't be possible, so thank you all. During the course of researching and processing these letters, other collections, such as one at the University of Michigan, have been discovered. The Rebecca Gratz digital collection will increase as new items are added. That is to say that this is a living collection, one that will grow in size and scope, and also one that will lend itself to a number of different uses. Hosting this collection online will only increase the accessibility and the number of researchers, both professional and student, that will find pleasure and insight, as Diane did, to this amazing woman and the world that she inhabited. In order to create this searchable website, the Gratz library staff spent the better part of 2022 working with a design team in Ohio to build the site. The scanned letters are assigned a numerical unique identifier, as well as basic metadata that introduces the letter's author, recipient, location, destination, date, and provenance. Which means that's where the original letter resides. Additional context was created explaining this process, which you can find on this page here, and the ways that users can access and cite the collection. So while Rebecca is known as a Pennsylvania resident, this collection goes far beyond the Mid-Atlantic region. While she is well known as a philanthropist, an educator, and an artist's muse, she was also a caregiver, a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a niece, and a friend. She witnessed joy and pain in many forms, including the many outbreaks of yellow fever in Philadelphia. The Rebecca Gratz digital collection allows users to search keywords such as yellow fever and retrieve any letters mentioning that topic. This is the current display of our letters. There are over 900 letters currently. Not all of them have been uploaded and are in the collection as of yet, but 150 of them have been transcribed in the draft form, and 24 of them are completely done. Here we have a powerful search box that allows the user to search within the collection. As I mentioned, they can search for the metadata, the summary, the web text, and the metadata also includes the descriptors of the collection. So I'll demonstrate that here. As I mentioned, yellow fever, that's one of the keywords that people can search for using the collection. And here you can see it's been narrowed down to 5 results. This is an individual item page. Each completed page will have the original scan available here. You can change the size, you can zoom in if you want to focus on particular texts. The transcription is here to the right. And the completed metadata is available here, including citations. So I will now allow our transcribers, Dr. Julie Fisher and Dr. Nina Varnke, to let them explain their process as well as the experiences they've had transcribing the letters of Rebecca Gratz.
Thank you, Donna. I am Julie Fisher, and tonight here with Nina, We're so pleased to share with you this first look at the Rebecca Gratz digital collection. And as everyone here knows, this project is about bringing to life Diane Ashton's vision, gathering these correspondence together and making them widely available online. And as you've heard, this has begun with so much support from so many communities, our partnering institutions. This is now possible. So Nina and I have been working on creating another way to help make the content of these correspondence accessible to a wider public. And that is by creating transcriptions. So we decipher Rebecca's handwriting and type out each letter word for word. This helps anyone who, for whatever reason, can't read Rebecca's handwriting, someone else's handwriting. They now have access to letters in their entirety. And equally important, as you've seen, you can now perform keyword searches. Nina and I tonight would like to take a moment to describe that process to you and then share what we see as emerging from this important collection. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you, Donna. You're already one step ahead. So the slide you see here is an overview of our process, and our decisions arise from hours spent reading and transcribing. And you may not believe me, but debating. There were fierce transcribing debates. And what they all come from is Nina and I are trying to decide what will be of most assistance to readers while maintaining integrity to the material. And while we will be brief tonight, we welcome questions, comments, and feedback, and are happy to discuss our process further. So step one, drafting transcriptions. We have settled on what is known as a semi-diplomatic transcription style. And basically what this means is that we represent the letter as close as we can to the original manuscript, but we allow select changes. So for example, we maintain original spelling, but we don't try to exactly replicate all the spacing on a page, which can at times be quirky. These guidelines and others, these are all available on the website under our editorial methodology. Now, an important part of this process is how we verify transcriptions, and that's to maintain fidelity with the letters. That is step two. Now, for this, we read each letter together. One person is actually reading the transcription aloud, and the other person is following along with the actual manuscript. And in this way, each transcript benefits from two sets of eyes. And this has proved absolutely invaluable. As anyone knows, if you come across a word that is difficult, it's always better to have a second person. And we've been able to crack a number of paleography mysteries. And you may not believe me, but that is quite thrilling. But given this is an ongoing project, right, many of the letters that we have right now are just in draft form. But in the spirit of accessibility, we're making those drafts available as they become available. And then we continue with our proofing process as we go along. And now to talk about the next stage of the process, I want to turn this over to Nina.
Good evening. It is a pleasure to be here. And my name is Nina Warnke. And this is step number 3 in our process. We want to further enhance accessibility by making each letter accompanied by a brief summary that simply highlights the major theme, as you can see here. It also, and that is an important aspect, indicates the relationship between the writer and the recipient. So many of the names that she is writing to or who are writing to her share the same first name or last name, and it is very difficult for sort of the more casual user to determine relationships. And Donna, if you could move further. And one more. Okay. The fourth step in our process is crafting the metadata. Once double proofed, each letter will be accompanied by metadata that include the basic information as you see it on the left, as well as geographic and topical subjects. It also includes, and that is on the next slide, all names referenced in it. To aid our work, we are compiling a list of names, which currently, after reading some close to 200 letters, contains almost 300 names, most of which we have been able to identify, as you can see here. As you can also see, the ones that are not identified are still included, and in the hopes that eventually we might find more information about the person. And the next slide, this is a very brief excerpt of the list of 300 names, which once completed, we will make available as an additional resource on the website. And back to you, Julie.
So together, all these steps, beginning with digitization, continuing on with transcriptions, adding metadata, we see this as creating layers or levels of usability. And the ability to search is important because, as you've heard, this is rather a large collection. But I also want to take a moment to highlight something that I find particularly special that can sometimes get lost. When you're talking about Rebecca Gratz, it's very easy and quick as people talk about the really amazing circles that she was writing with and communicating with, literary figures, political events, travels. It's very exciting. And sometimes we forget too that this correspondence is really special because it's covering a lifetime. On the left, you see our first known Rebecca Gratz letter written when she's 19 in 1800. And then to the right, the last known Rebecca Gratz letter written at the age of 85. So in here, we see decades, and it's a really special thing when we're transcribing. And it's sometimes when we have some of her earlier letters, and then maybe later in the day, Nina and I are working on something from the end of life and watching her concerns shift and change. It's a special thing to be witness to all of this. And in the historical record, having access to her correspondence that spans so many decades truly is special. And now, with almost 200 letters into this collection that we've transcribed, we wanted to share some important emerging themes, next slide, and what undoubtedly inspired Diane Ashton to conceive of this project.
And I did want to add to what Julie just said. We are living imagined conversations, as Jonathan Sana said earlier. So we are very much in contact with her. Rebecca Gratz, as we may know, spent most of her life in Philadelphia, but her world went far beyond it. Her charitable work and her spearheading educational institutions brought her into contact with many leading figures of the social, literary, and scientific worlds, both Jewish and non-Jewish, forcing her to negotiate her public role as a woman as well as her Jewish faith and identity. But she was also deeply connected to siblings, a wide network of relatives and friends who visited or settled in far-flung places, such as her brother Benjamin, who moved to Kentucky in 1818, which at the time was the westernmost state in the Union, and she always referred to the West, the far West. But many also settled further in the South. Letter writing kept her in touch with multiple generations of family and friends, and connected her directly to political events, anti-Semitic incidents, but also to slavery and ultimately the divisions of the Civil War, all of which she discussed in her letters. Of course, her extensive reading, be it fiction or poetry, historical or scholarly works, kept her abreast of many of the major interests of the day, and she did much to distribute that knowledge. Next slide, please, Donna. The men in her life ventured well beyond the United States, exploring Europe for pleasure and business and the Far East for commerce, bringing yet another aspect of the world to her, while at the same time making her very anxious about their well-being. In fact, and that is the next slide, one of the most consistent themes that this correspondence brings into focus, in addition to those mentioned before, is the centrality of well-being. In other words, health, illness, and death. The gendered nature of this correspondence may account for it. After all, almost all her correspondents were women, with the exception of her brother Ben. And caring for the sick at home and dealing with childbirth, child and maternal health concerns were central tasks for these women. They discussed medicine, household remedies, and vaccinations, and kept each other informed about the spread of epidemics. Letters too abound with references to friends and family members dying often at a very young age during childbirth from tuberculosis, epidemics, and many other unnamed illnesses. While concern for the health of others was always a focal point in these letters, the vast array of topics these women discussed provide rich insights into the daily lives of 19th century women, their intellectual interests, their political understanding, their thoughts on the role of women, their reading practices, their expressions of faith, and their emotional world. Julie.
So we hope you see, and you hopefully are, what we see and what we know Diane Ashton saw. And that is, while this story begins with one Jewish woman, it does not end there. These letters speak to Jewish history and women's history, both of which, after all, are American history. And we are thrilled to be bringing this to a larger audience.